In the first 10 seconds, the truth feels impossible to accept because the killer isn't fleeing down a dark alley or hiding. Behind a locked door, the killer is standing right there, smiling, helping, comforting, listening, and no one realizes that the person everyone trusts is the same person who has already decided who will never make it home alive. In the quiet coastal town of Greyhaven, a place defined by early morning fog, weathered wooden houses, and a community where everyone knows everyone else's name, the murders didn't arrive with chaos or visible warning signs. They arrived slowly, politely, almost invisibly, woven into the fabric of everyday life. Greyhaven sat along a rocky shoreline in the Pacific Northwest, the kind of town where the sound of waves blended with church bells on Sunday mornings, where children rode bicycles unattended, and where neighbors borrowed sugar without locking their doors. The victims seemed ordinary at first glance: a schoolteacher nearing retirement, a fisherman in his 40s, a single mother working nights at the diner, a local journalist known for covering town council meetings and charity events. There was no obvious connection between them, no shared enemy, no secret past that screamed motive. Each death was ruled accidental or natural at first, and that was the most terrifying part. The killer didn't need to break in, didn't need to run, didn't need to threaten. The killer was welcomed inside. The first death was Clara Whitman, 62, beloved by generations of students who credited her with their love of literature. She was found at the bottom of her staircase, neck snapped at an angle that made some uneasy, but the official reports said fall, unfortunate but not suspicious. The town mourned, candles were lit, and someone organized a fundraiser for a library donation in her name. The second death came 6 weeks later when Mark Ellison failed to return from his usual solo fishing trip. His boat was found drifting, engine off, his body recovered days later with seawater in his lungs. The coroner ruled it a tragic accident, another reminder that the ocean could be cruel even to those who respected it. People shook their heads and talked about fate. The third death was different, because it happened in public view. Lila Monroe collapsed during her late shift at the diner, clutching her chest as customers watched helplessly. A suspected heart attack at 37 raised eyebrows, but toxicology came back inconclusive, and grief pushed suspicion aside. By the time the journalist Evan Price was found dead in his home, the town was exhausted by loss, and fear existed only as a quiet hum beneath routine. Evan's death was ruled suicide, a conclusion based more on assumption than evidence, and Greyhaven accepted it because the alternative was unthinkable. What no one realized was that the killer had attended every vigil, signed every sympathy card, offered rides, brought meals, and listened patiently as people spoke about their fears. His name was Daniel Mercer, a municipal records clerk, a man whose job involved organizing the town's history, preserving documents, tracking births, deaths, and property deeds. He knew everyone's routines, addresses, and habits. He was known as dependable, gentle, almost forgettable. That was his power. Daniel had grown up in Greyhaven, overlooked by teachers, ignored by peers, raised by a mother who worked constantly, and a father who vanished before he could form memories. He learned early that visibility did not come from being loud, but from being useful. He volunteered, helped elderly neighbors, fixed broken steps, filed paperwork no one else wanted to touch. Over years, he became part of every life without anyone truly seeing him. The crimes, when later reconstructed, revealed chilling precision. Clara hadn't fallen. Daniel had been there earlier that evening, bringing her documents she'd asked him to locate from town archives. A gentle shove at the top of the stairs, positioned just right, left no marks of a struggle. Mark Ellison hadn't drowned accidentally. Daniel knew his fishing schedule and slipped a sedative into the thermos Mark always left unattended on his boat. By the time Mark realized something was wrong, his muscles were failing, and the sea did the rest. Lila Monroe trusted Daniel because he sat at the diner counter during her shifts, listening to her complain about exhaustion and money. The substance that stopped her heart was tasteless, odorless, slipped into her coffee during a moment when she turned away. Evan Price was the only one who came close to uncovering the truth. As a journalist, Evan noticed patterns others didn't. He began reviewing public records, noticing anomalies in death certificates, inconsistent timings, subtle similarities. He shared his concerns with Daniel, the person who had access to everything. thinking he was asking for help. That conversation sealed his fate. The night Evan died, Daniel staged the scene carefully, leaving just enough ambiguity for authorities to accept suicide rather than open another investigation. The police investigation, when it finally arrived in earnest, came too late for the victims but not for the truth. It began when Evan's sister pushed back publicly against the suicide ruling, demanding transparency. Pressure mounted, and a state investigator was sent to re-examine the cases collectively rather than individually. That was the mistake made earlier, seeing each death as separate rather than connected. Patterns emerged slowly. All victims had recent interactions with Daniel Mercer. All deaths occurred within predictable windows after those interactions. Financial motives were ruled out, then personal grudges, until investigators faced something more unsettling: a killer driven not by gain, but by control and erasure. Forensics, once updated, identified trace evidence previously overlooked: residue in Lila's cup, fibers on Clara's stairs, a chemical match to the sedative used on Mark. Digital records revealed Evan had scheduled a meeting with Daniel the day before his death. Surveillance footage from a nearby building showed Daniel entering Evan's house that night. When police finally questioned him, Daniel didn't run. He cooperated. He smiled. He answered everything calmly, until the evidence closed in. His arrest sent shockwaves through Greyhaven. People replayed memories, moments where nothing seemed wrong, where he helped carry groceries or console grieving families. The community grappled with the idea that evil didn't arrive screaming. It arrived holding doors open. At trial, Daniel showed no remorse, only disappointment that his work had been misunderstood. He spoke of balance, of choosing people whose deaths would be accepted, unnoticed, absorbed. He was sentenced to life without parole, but the sentence did little to heal the fractures left behind. Greyhaven changed forever. Doors locked. Smiles questioned. Trust eroded. The case became a staple in true crime discussions, a chilling lesson in how predators can hide in routine, in kindness, in familiarity. Even now, some townspeople believe there may have been more victims who were never identified, deaths still resting quietly in files marked accidental. This dark case file remains a warning, a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who seems least threatening. And as you sit with this story, consider the unsettling question that lingers in Greyhaven's shadows and in communities everywhere. How well do we really know the people around us? This has been Dark Case Files, a true crime story about a killer hiding in plain sight. And if this case disturbed you, challenged your assumptions, or made you look twice at familiarity, subscribe to Dark Case Files for more deep dives into the world's most unsettling crime stories, because in the dark the truth is rarely what it seems.